This is a kind of zombie movie at its base, but it kind of reminds me a lot of the sort of Resident Evil series. I'm actually talking about the video games, and a little bit of Left 4 Dead as well, for throwing video games in there. So why is this? Well, let me explain. This is basically it's filmed in Germany, but it has a majority of sort of foreign cast, but it is an English spoken movie. And it really sort of follows a group of survivors in the kind of the early days of a zombie apocalypse, and this kind of apocalypse is caused by basically genetic sort of, manipulation and kind of experimentation that's kind of gone wrong, basically, and that's what we actually find out through that movie. And it really follows a sort of group of survivors who are sort of genetically immune to this kind of infection, and focuses on kind of one main guy called Tom, I believe his name is. And he's kind of really the de facto leader of this kind of sort of ever expanding sort of group of survivors, and dwindling at some point as well. And kind of really sort of follows their journey as they sort of struggle to survive, trying to sort of indoctrinate new members into the sort of group. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the sort of Walking Dead almost, if it was done on a sort of low budget, on a sort of the space of a film. But why does it remind me of these other sort of movies? Well, one thing I did like about this film, I have to say, is the kind of the world building that it does. So it does quite a good job of explaining that there's not just zombies here, basically. Then even the zombies themselves are kind of different types, and we hear the sort of term walkers, and we hear the term runners, and some are kind of susceptible to light and kind of hibernate during the evening. Some aren't. Some have kind of white blood. Some have got red blood. We don't really know too much why that is. It just kind of almost is introduced, but not ever kind of really addressed all that much. It just suffice to say it's kind of other types and other sort of creatures as well. We sort of see one girl with kind of no eyes and has kind of almost like a banshee scream and things like that. And there's like, I think he's meant to be like the big bad guy, who is this big bloke basically. He looks more demonic than a kind of a zombie. So there's a few different things going on. So this is one that kind of why it reminds me of those two video games, as you kind of have the variety and kind of the monsters there. And then there's basically some sort of questions asked. So scientific questions, there's some questions towards religion and stuff like that towards the end of the film as well. So it starts to ask these questions and kind of almost put some stuff on the board, but never really goes so far as to address what's going on or the kind of the bigger picture. So it doesn't answer as many questions as it asks. So you may find that a little frustrating, but nevertheless, I did actually quite enjoy the fact that this world building sort of takes place. As far as the sort of the zombie makeup goes, not too bad. And like I said, it's a relatively low budget film, but I have to say I thought the makeup was acceptable. Like I said, there's some sort of variety here that we sort of seen, and I thought they did a pretty decent job in kind of making them look quite scary. The actual characters themselves, again, I actually quite like the characters here. I thought they were a good sort of mix of people, and some people who I thought were just going to be, oh, he's blatantly going to be just the idiot and cause some sort of trouble. Didn't end up doing that. And there's a few sort of red herrings here and there. There's one particular scene where a guy gets like some dust blown in his face, and you think, oh, that's going to mean something, and but there's some good sort of instances like that where there's a little bit of misdirection and kind of subverts your expectations to some degree. So what's not so good about this film? Well, one thing I'm going to tell you right off that kind of really took me out of it: Parkour Zombies. That's right, you heard me correctly. Parkour Zombies. Why the hell this decision was made to put in there, I will never know. Possibly the most ridiculous concept I've ever seen. I mean, we get that some zombies are meant to be fast, yeah, fair enough, okay. But how these zombies suddenly become sort of trained acrobats and things like that is ridiculous. And I'm guessing that they're kind of meant to be like, imagine that they're sort of jumping sort of super distances and things like that, but it doesn't look like that. It looks like Parkour Zombies. So it just looks really stupid, and that is, they're in it quite a lot, so it's not like it's one scene. So it's kind of so a bit stupid, to be honest. The other thing I would say here is this is the less of an issue for me, to be honest, but it's an English spoken film, but clearly English language isn't a lot of these actors' kind of first language. So sometimes it's a little hard to understand the sort of thick accents, and I think acting in a different language, which is not your own, sometimes comes across as a little stilted on screen. The acting isn't terrible, but you can certainly sometimes see the emotion behind the line delivery and stuff is you know, a little lacking. It's particularly the main guy, Tom, especially the beginning of the movie when we sort of first see, you know, his reactions to stuff. It just seems way too kind of calm and accepting of what's kind of going on and all this kind of crazy stuff's happening sort of around him, to be honest. Now, you could argue maybe the plot isn't all of that sort of fantastic. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of survivors trying to stay alive in the zombie apocalypse. And how many times have we seen that? Quite a lot, but I did appreciate this kind of building of the kind of larger world. There is a kind of post-credit scene, which again kind of hints towards a kind of larger world. So if you have seen this movie and you haven't seen that, it's only a few seconds, but it is it's worth looking at. Overall, though, I actually quite enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed the characters. They had a bit of fun in this film as well. It's not all kind of dreary. One thing, again, I like is the survivors trying to sort of just have a bit of levity within their kind of ranks and trying to sort of lift their spirits as well as the kind of the physical sort of aspect of having to live in a zombie apocalypse. So overall, I actually enjoyed this film. I wouldn't mind seeing a follow-up from it. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.